It starts in 1959, and at that time, things were upside down in India. The reason was that the government decided to make Hindi the only official language of the country. Of course, this decision didn't sit well with a lot of people, because India is a huge country with over 800 languages. Suddenly, we find ourselves in front of a train, moving along peacefully, but a group of young people called Purantobada show up and decide to stop it. These kids were students from all over India, Tamil, Telugu, Bengali, all united as one to reject this decision. Their plan was clear and direct: get all the passengers off the train without anyone getting hurt, and then burn the train itself to send their message to the government. The leader of this group is our hero, Chesian, a patriotic young man who knows exactly what he's doing. But while they are trying to carry out the plan, an unexpected obstacle appears. Intelligence officer Thiru Nandan, who is the villain of our story. Thiru's goal was to protect the politicians on the train and prevent the students from burning it at any cost. This is where the battle begins, a brutal street fight. Chesian and Thiru went at each other, and the hitting was savage. Chesian had his face completely covered, so Thiru couldn't make out his features. But in the middle of the chaos, Thiru catches a glimpse of an old tattoo in the Tamil language on Chesian's chest. Because of the violence of the fight, Thiru loses a finger on his right hand, an injury that would prevent him from holding a gun or aiming correctly for the rest of his life. In the end, the students succeed. They secured the passengers and actually burned the train. This was a powerful and painful message that reached everyone. The news, of course, spreads and reaches the office of the Prime Minister himself, who suspected that a heavy political party was behind this. But Thiru shocks him with the truth, telling him, "No, sir, these are just some students who know exactly what they are doing." To understand why they did this in the first place, the story wasn't just about a language. The story was that there were vacant government jobs in the railway, and the job advertisement was published in Hindi language newspapers only. No one bothered with the Tamil newspapers or published the news in them. Simply put, whoever doesn't know Hindi has no place and no way to earn a living in this country. So these students decided to revolt against this injustice. They used a specific chemical substance to set the train on fire. We find out that this chemical was made in the college's chemistry lab, meaning the students were definitely behind this. Thiru was fuming and wanted to apply the harshest punishment to them, but the minister had a completely different opinion. He told him, "Let's not inflame things further, Thiru. We'll say it was an ordinary fire accident and close the case." Thiru was going crazy because of this response, but there was nothing he could do. After that, the minister went out to reassure people and told them that no language would be forced on anyone until 1965. Hindi and English would remain the official languages, and he promised the people time to accept the situation. But Thiru didn't care about any of that. He saw anyone opposing the Hindi language as a personal enemy. The strange thing is that Thiru himself is actually half Tamil. His father is Tamil, and his mother is from the north. Chesian and his friends were over the moon with the success of their protest, but that joy didn't last. They suddenly discovered that one of their group was missing. The real pain came when they found out he died in the train fire. Chesian was broken and crushed inside, especially since he was the one who convinced the boy's parents in the village to let him come and study with him. This wasn't just a friend, he was his best friend. From that moment, Chesian decided to retire from any political work or protests. He believed this path only leads to loss and heartbreak with no hope. As for Thiru, he was living for one single hope: to reach the person who made him lose his finger and hold him accountable. Years pass, and we enter the year 1964. The Prime Minister who promised the people not to impose the Hindi language dies. With his death, the government starts imposing Hindi again by force. Chesian, by this time, had grown up and worked in the railway as a locomotive fire technician. He used to deal with his Hindi-speaking colleagues using the English language to stand his ground and not back down. In the middle of these stories, Ratna Mala appears. She is Chesian's neighbor and the daughter of a member of parliament. Her family is originally Telugu, but because they've lived there for years, she is very good at Tamil, Telugu, and Hindi too. Ratna Mala worked at the national radio station. She had a strong and influential personality. Her father thought his daughter was great on the radio, but the truth was she was terrified of the microphone. As soon as she would start talking, her words would cut off and she would stutter. Because of this, she escaped from speaking and stuck to administrative work at the station. At this time, Chinnathurai, Chesian's younger brother, was studying at a distant university. His grandmother used to send him his allowance via a post office money order. But this time, the shock was huge. The clerk told her, "Ma'am, all the forms have become in Hindi. The poor elderly people like her sir, don't know how to read or write Hindi, and the post office employees themselves didn't understand anything. The world went dark in their faces, and they didn't know how to get the money to their kids. The news reached Chinnathurai, who turned out to be, along with his girlfriend Ratnamala, members of the Purantobada organization. Chinnathurai didn't even know that his big brother, Chexian, was the historic leader of this organization, because Chexian had closed that chapter completely long ago. Because of the post office form situation, Chinnathurai and his friends set things on fire, held a protest, and burned a building that had Hindi signs. When Chexian found out his brother was behind it, he went to him, yelled at him, and said, "Didn't I tell you 100 times to stay away from this headache?" He made him swear 100 oaths that he wouldn't go near any protest or set fire to anything again. Chinnathurai agreed against his will for the sake of his big brother. But things were boiling even more with the arrival of a new prime minister who decided to impose Hindi in every inch. Thiru now had the green light to do anything to the opposition. He went to meet the state's chief minister, and they coordinated the suppression plan together. In the middle of this mess, Chexian got the opportunity of a lifetime, an interview for a job as a central servant in Delhi. But the interview required the Hindi language, and he had no choice but to have Ratnamala teach him. They started meeting every morning for her to teach him Hindi, and love started knocking on their hearts. A love story began with the letters of the language that Chexian originally hated. Ratnamala, because her father was an MP, knew all the secrets and political decisions. She started leaking all the information to Chinnathurai and his friends. She told them the government intended to impose Hindi by force of arms, and that Thiru was busy gathering people and throwing them in prisons. The even bigger disaster was that the prime minister intended to visit the city of Madurai to inaugurate Hindi Language Week and raise the flag. So Thiru decided to prevent anyone from raising a black flag. He closed all the shops and factories that sell black cloth or ink to cut them off. But Chinnathurai wasn't planning to stay silent. He gathered his men, and they swore they would raise the black flag in the face of the prime minister while he raised the flag, no matter the cost. The matter didn't need black cloth or special ink. Anything black would do the trick. Chexian saw his brother Chinnathurai planning this disaster and went to him to stop him. Chinnathurai stayed stubborn and insisted on going. Chexian found no solution but to tie him up and literally twist his leg until he couldn't walk a single step, just to ensure he wouldn't move from his place or go to his doom. Chinnathurai was fuming at his brother, but Chexian left him and went to catch his interview appointment. On the way to the railway station, he bumped into a poor young man whose books and pen fell onto the tracks. The young man started crying bitterly and said, "Sir, this is my last hope for the government exam, and I don't have the price of a new pen." Chexian's heart softened for him, and he took out his expensive pen, which was a precious gift to him, gave it to him, and said, "Take it, hero, and when you finish the exam, leave it for me here." The young man ran to catch his exam, and Chexian entered the interview. But the shock was there. They refused to hire him because his Hindi wasn't fluent, even though he was good at English and ready to learn. But they told him in bold letters, "This job is only for those who speak Hindi." Chexian returned to the station heartbroken and found the young man he gave the pen to standing and shouting in front of the minister. The exam was cancelled because the questions were going to be in Hindi only, and there was no Tamil. The young man was explaining with pain, "We are being wronged. By the time we think and translate, those who know Hindi will have finished the exam and taken the job." The minister replied to him coldly, "Either learn Hindi or English, otherwise you have no place." Out of sheer despair, the young man took the pen Chexian gave him, wrote a suicide note, and set himself on fire in front of everyone. Chexian stood there stunned, and the memory reel of his friend who died long ago in the fire passed before his eyes. He returned to his town a broken man. In the town, the minister was preparing to raise the flag, and they had banned anything black from appearing in the place. They even forcibly ripped black hair ribbons off little girls' heads. But Chinnathurai and his men weren't going to be silent. Instead of the banned black cloth, they gathered massive amounts of black carbon paper. As soon as the minister started raising the flag, they flew the carbon paper in the air like crows and covered the sky with blackness over everyone's heads, as if they were telling the regime, "We are still here." At that moment, Thiru and his men arrive and attack the protesters. Chinnathurai falls into their hands. Before Thiru could reach out to hit him, a bottle flies from above and smashes on his head. Thiru looks up and catches a glimpse of the one who threw it, the same person from the train incident long ago. It was Chexian. Chexian, who had sworn 100 oaths not to return to these problems again. But the events and the injustice he saw brought him back to the field. He comes down to join Chinnathurai and becomes the leader of the protest. At that exact moment, Chinnathurai and Ratnamala discover the surprise, that Chexian is the the historic leader of the Purantobada organization. The youth had decided to hold a protest against the imposition of the Hindi language on January 26th. They went to the police station to get a permit, but that was actually a trap and part of Thiru's plan so he could hit and arrest anyone who opened their mouth on Republic Day. But Chezian was much smarter than him and read the game correctly. He told Chinatharai that they must postpone the protest to the morning of the 27th and promised he would get the permit himself. When Thiru found out they changed the protest time, he lost it and realized the leader of Purantobada was playing chess with him and had him in check. But Thiru was determined to get a live fire order for the 27th as well. The problem was the Prime Minister wasn't answering his phone at all. Out of pure spite, Thiru was monitoring phone calls to catch any lead on the organization members. When he found that Ratnamala was talking to Chinatharai a lot, he brought her and her MP father and threatened them that he would arrest her on charges of leaking political information. When the father was terrified and asked for the solution, Thiru told him, "The Prime Minister isn't answering me, but if you're the one who calls him, he'll answer." The father was forced against his will to call the PM and make up a story, saying this wasn't an ordinary protest and that they intended to burn everything: the post office, the train station, and the Hindi language institution. He asked him to issue Section 144, a law that gives them the right to use live fire on anyone gathering there. And so, Thiru the Fox managed to deceive the PM and blackmail the father to get the kill order. Ratnamala was desperate to get the word to her friends by any means because they thought it was a normal, peaceful protest and didn't know the police had a real shoot-to-kill order. But her father locked her in the room and she couldn't say a word. At that time, Chinatharai had prepared his men in the street and Chezian still hadn't brought the permit. The police were intentionally stalling and delaying Chezian so he wouldn't reach his men. On the way, he accidentally hears people talking about the massacre that's going to happen at the protest. He realizes his brother Chinatharai's life is in real danger. He takes off at maximum speed to save him, but the protest had already started and the youth were protesting quietly. But Thiru ordered the police to trap them further inside the square to close the exit on them. The protesters spotted the snipers on top of the buildings, but thought they would fire rubber bullets like any protest, so they kept chanting. But the police, by direct orders from Thiru, started hitting them brutally and provoking them. The protesters started defending themselves and the gates of hell were opened. As soon as Chezian arrives, Thiru has already given the order to the police to fire on Chinatharai. The bullet hits and settles in his chest. Chezian is shocked and runs to him like crazy to save him. He takes off his white shirt and raises it to the police like a surrender flag to stop the firing. At that moment, Thiru's eyes fall on Chezian's exposed chest and he catches a glimpse of the old Tamil tattoo. Here he knows that this is the same person who burned the train long ago and that he is the leader who blew off his finger. Thiru, out of pure cold-heartedness, didn't allow anyone to give first aid to Chinatharai, who still had life in him. He arrested Chezian and his men and threw Chinatharai into the sewers in cold blood and left him to die. After that, he takes Chezian to prison and starts torturing him with the most hideous types of torture to make him name the rest of the organization members. But Chezian was a mountain. He endured the torture and didn't open his mouth with a word. When Thiru leaves him and walks away, a noble Tamil police officer enters and tells Chezian he must escape from here immediately. This officer drops a bombshell and tells him that his friend who died in the train fire long ago didn't die by accident due to the fire, but he threw himself into the fire by his own will so he wouldn't be arrested and wouldn't reveal his leader's name. So that these victims don't go in vain, the officer gives Chezian a knife and tells him to wound himself slightly and escape in the crowd. Chezian actually carries out the plan. When Thiru returns and discovers that Chezian vanished into thin air, he knows immediately that the Tamil officer was the one who helped him. Without negotiation, he pulls out his pistol and shoots the officer dead. Thiru goes crazy and starts looking for Chezian in every tiny hole. He tortures all the students arrested in the protest and goes to turn Chezian's village upside down to find him. But while Thiru was turning the world over, Chezian had boarded a train and reached Delhi. At that time, members of the Purantobada organization were there and decided to hold a massive and different protest. They wanted the finance minister to really feel the problems they were facing. That's why they changed all the buses and made them in the Tamil language with "Long live the Hindi language" written on them. But the Hindi-speaking people didn't understand a single word of what was written. This matter gets attention and reaches the PM, who speaks with Chezian. Chezian explains to him that every state has its language and heritage, and if they try to force Hindi on everyone, the same problems happening now will occur. He told him, "We wrote 'Long live Hindi' and Tamil on the signs, and the Hindi-speaking people didn't understand anything. That's exactly what will happen if you try to force Hindi in all the states." He also told him that people in their states only know their own languages, and it's not right to force a second language on them. Suddenly, this isn't a problem of one state, it's a problem of many states. The PM told him that he needs signed and written complaints from all the people facing this problem. problem. He told him if they brought many complaints from all the states, he might make a decision on the matter. They promised him they would do so by any means. The PM thought they were bluffing and wouldn't be able to, but they knew they had members in every state, so they started sending secret postal money orders to get the word to all their members. The PM had said he would arrive in the city of Coimbatore in a few days, and the complaints were supposed to be submitted on May 12th. That's why they had to get the word and this date to their members by any means. To make sure no one suspected them, they started sending money orders to all the states for a slightly weird amount. 12 rupees and 5 paisas. This number wasn't a coincidence. It was a code so everyone would understand the date is the 12th in the 5th month. And not just that, they wrote the name of the place, Coimbatore, in an old script called Brahmi. This is a very ancient Tamil script that only specialists know. Their goal was for every member in the region to gather the people's complaints in his state and bring them with him at the specified time and place. But unfortunately, these money orders caught Thiru's attention. Since he's a fox of an officer and wants to catch them by any means, he had studied well all the ancient languages and dialects that the Tamils use in their codes. Thiru understood the game and knew exactly what they intended. But the strange thing is, he didn't stop the money orders or prevent them. He let them pass because he wanted them all to gather in one place and catch the whole organization in one shot. And indeed, just as they planned, they started gathering in a mill factory in the Palashi region. Chezian arrived first, followed by his friend Michael and his men from Andhra State with all the complaints they gathered. People started arriving one after another from everywhere. But there was one missing, Chaco from Kerala State. Chaco works in a German company and apologized that he wouldn't be able to come because he had urgent work the next day. The group spent the night in the mill and were waiting for morning to come so that as soon as the PM arrived in Coimbatore, they would all move and go meet him and hand over the complaints. But the winds blew in a way the ships didn't desire. Thiru had read their minds well and reached the mill to catch them red-handed. He knew they were hiding inside. To force them to appear, he started gathering the poor people working in the area and torturing them in cold blood. At that moment, Chetsian and the men started moving and decided to smuggle the complaints through the sewage pipes to get them to Coimbatore. Chetsian told his men, "You guys take off with the papers, and I have another mission." So some of the men took the complaints and actually escaped, and the rest hid in scattered places, but Thiru had no mercy. He started chasing them and picking them off one by one and shooting them. This time, Thiru didn't bring ordinary police soldiers. He brought special forces because he didn't trust the Tamil soldiers and feared they would sympathize with their countrymen. The brutality Thiru was using made the special forces themselves unable to stand the sight. When Chezian saw this massacre, he couldn't take it and came out to Thiru with a car full of complaint envelopes and surrendered himself. Thiru's only concern was that these papers never reached the minister. So as soon as Chezian brought them to him, he set them all on fire while gloating. But the shock was when the fire consumed the paper. Thiru discovered the paper was all blank white. There wasn't a single complaint. At that moment, he hears the sound of the train whistle as it moves, and here he understands the game. The real complaints are on that train. Thiru orders one of his officers to detain Chezian and takes off running after the train. At the same time, Michael and the rest of the men were trying to reach Coimbatore in another car, but the police stopped them on the road. Michael sacrificed himself, jumped from the car, and ran to distract them. Indeed, the police chased him and let the car pass. But unfortunately, they shot Michael and killed him. His friends saw the sight while crying blood, but they had to continue their way to catch the mission. As for Thiru, he managed to catch the train and jump inside. He actually found the envelopes that had the real complaints. But to be able to destroy them all, the train had to stop at the next station. Thiru lost it and started calling the next station to stop the train at any cost. Indeed, the train reached the station, and a large number of special forces and officers were waiting there, but the surprise was a shock to Thiru. The officer standing there, instead of stopping the train, was laughing as he threw more complaint envelopes into the train. This officer wasn't a stranger. It was Chaco, the leader of the Pure and Tobata organization in Kerala State. Remember when Chaco apologized and said he had work and couldn't come to the mill? That work was to wear an officer's uniform and wait for this moment. More importantly, Thiru himself is the one who entrusted Chezian to Chaco and told him, "Keep him under your guard," before he ran after the train. Of course, Chaco freed Chezian and brought him with him. Chezian also jumped and boarded the train. The battle became fire on top of the train. Thiru was ready to burn the whole train with everyone in it. The important thing was these complaints don't reach the minister. He actually set fire to part of the train. Chezian was trying with all his strength to prevent the fire from reaching the rest of the cars that had the complaints. Chezian managed to push Thiru into the burning car and detach the remaining intact cars from the burning one. At this time, the PM had already lost hope that the students would come and decided to pack his things and leave leave to board his train from the station. As the PM stood on the platform, suddenly a single train car appears moving alone on the tracks coming toward them. One of the men runs quickly and changes the track switch, so the car goes on to another track and enters the station. Indeed, train cars that were coming from everywhere started arriving, and every car was full of people's complaints in their original languages. Here the PM saw with his own eyes mountains of paper written in different languages and finally understood that India is a continent, not just one language, and that imposing one language on everyone is impossible. In the middle of this crowd, one of the women catches a glimpse of Thiru thrown inside the car that was burning. He still had life in him and was taking his last breaths. She tried to help him and told him, "Let's get you to the hospital." But Thiru refused with all pride. His whole life he heard words that hurt him from the leadership above him. "Your blood is Tamil, meaning you could betray us at any moment." Thiru wanted to prove to them that he was loyal to them until the last breath. He feared if he lived and these complaints reached, they would say he's the one who helped them because his Tamil blood yearned for his people. He decided that death was more honorable for him than living while the leadership doubted his loyalty. The struggle of the students and youth succeeds. They manage to get the voice of the people to the PM. Based on that, the government backs down on the decision to impose the Hindi language. Every state got the right to use its own language in speaking and writing. In the state of Tamil Nadu, the official languages became Tamil and English, and no one can force Hindi on anyone. In the end, the revolution of the Parantabada organization won. The film ends with real photos from the protests that happened, documented for history, to confirm that truth always wins if there are free men behind it who are not afraid. And with that, today's movie ends.